All right, welcome back again, friends. We have our third part of our composition lesson, and we are going to be taking a look at how we're going to use our rhythm to create a song. So, you are going to still need that same rhythm that you created in part number two. And then we're going to discover how we can turn that from a rhythm into an actual song. So, to start off with here, we're going to review a little bit, and it looks like a lot of words, but it's really going to go kind of quick. So, in parts one and two, we explored creating a rhythmic composition using half, quarter, eighth, and not 16, excuse me, half, quarter, and eighth notes along with our quarter rest. We discovered and reviewed time signatures, bar lines, measures, and the double bar line, which are all elements of the staff which help us to write down our music. Now, please recall that the time signature is what controls the number of beats in the measure. I saw a couple of people saying that this was an optional thing. That was something that I put on your self-check to make sure that you were paying attention. Time signatures are not optional, ladies and gentlemen. We need to have them to make sure that we know how many beats are going to be in each of our measures so we can make a coherent measure that sounds appropriate. So, speaking of the term measures, measures are small, manageable pieces of music. So, it's like the words in a book. We have smaller little pieces to look at so we don't see this big, long string of notes that makes it really hard to read and understand what is going on. Bar lines are what separates the music into measures. They are the vertical lines that come between each of those at the appropriate number of beats. So in our time signature that we're using right now, 4/4, after every 4 beats, there is a bar line that is going to be creating a new measure. And once you get to the new measure, the number of beats starts over again, which means that we would then have 4 more beats that we have to fill up and etc., etc. The double bar line at the end is what finalizes your composition and tells us that we are completely done with it, meaning that the music is over. As we discussed in our part 1 lesson, talking about that, I believe, we talked about how it's at the very end of each composition and it shows us that we are all the way finished, that the song is done. So we're going to make sure that we keep all of those elements in our composition because now we're not going to just create a rhythm composition, we're going to create a melody. So the next steps are, like I said, going to be adding pitches to create a song or a melody. First thing I want to do, though, with you is review the pitches that are on the treble clef staff. I know it's been a little while since we've worked on these, and I want to make sure that we all understand what's going on before we dive into trying to compose our own rhythm or our own melodies. If we don't have a solid understanding of the pitches, making a melody is going to be a lot harder. So we're also going to work on the pitches that come below the staff. We're not going to worry about the ones up above the staff for the time being. I just want to look at the ones below. So let's review. The staff is made up of 5 parallel lines and 4 spaces. You can see right there they are numbered 1 through 5 for the lines in blue and numbers 1 through 4 in green for the spaces. They always start at the bottom. For this stuff to work, these strategies that I teach you and everything like that, it must start at the bottom of the staff. So we use strategies to assign a letter to each line or space. So what we play or sing or what we're going to compose with is the pitch that is on that specific line or space. So once again, starting at the bottom, we got to make sure that we always start down there and build our way up. So the line note strategy has a 5-word sentence that we should recall that is going to show us what each of those 5 lines are. So if we start at the bottom, it is E, G, B, D, and F. So unless you want to remember those numbers, we are going to use the strategy every good boy does fine. So we only use the first letter of each word to name the pitch. So don't go thinking, once again, like I said before, that the second line there is the word good. It is not. The word good is something called a mnemonic, which is going to help us to remember something by associating a specific word or phrase with it. So that mnemonic for the lines, every good boy does fine, shows us that we have E, G, B, D, and F for our line notes. The space strategy for those 4 spaces is going to be F, A, C, and E. Now, there is not a sentence that we have for it. It's just that 4-letter word. It's face, because we spell face F-A-C-E. So we go in those spaces, F, A, C, and E from the bottom. And please remember that it's the letter that is the space note. It's not face is the first space. That's not how that works. Face is telling us all 4 of those spaces. So please recall that we use F, A, C, and E in each of those individual spaces. Now, going outside the staff, we do have a couple of those notes that we're going to be working on, the ones that are below the staff here. So remember, pitches located at the bottom of the staff are considered lower, and you're going to discover this as you begin composing. Using the house analogy that we've talked about in the past, we think about the lower level of a house, but still above ground. You can see right there, it's got those little steps leading down to the low D, which is the downstairs. That's our strategy for it, downstairs, which is low D. So it's right immediately below the staff. There's no ledger line, there's no space, no nothing. It's right underneath. Speaking of ledger lines, we do have those lines that extend the staff either up or down, called the ledger line. And using the house analogy, we're thinking of an area underneath the house that's a little bit smaller. Can't walk upright, can't do that. So we have the crawl space. That middle C right there is the strategy crawl space. Now, another way to remember middle C is number 1, it's the ledger line below the staff. But number 2, it's the only pitch that we have that uses the adjective middle. So hopefully we recall all of those different pitches, because now what we're going to do is we are going to take the rhythm that we created in part number 2, and we're going to add the pitches to the staff to create a melody or the tune of a song. So you are able to use any of those pitches from Every Good Boy Does Fine, Face in the Space, or middle C and low D. The composition has to start and end on middle C though. What this is going to do, is it's going to help us have a song that sounds complete, something that sounds like it is going to work together. So as we see, I have the rhythm that I composed for part number 2. And now my rhythm is only 4 beats, or 4 measures long. 5 measures, I guess. So my rhythm is 5 measures long. Yours is going to be 8. I'm doing it a little bit shorter to make sure that this video doesn't go forever. Okay? So what we're going to do first is we're going to take that same rhythm that we had, and we're going to just keep it in mind. And we're going to create a staff down here that has the 5 lines and 4 spaces with our treble clef. So we're going to be making this a treble clef melody. So the next thing that we're going to do, once we've created our staff and we kind of line up our measures, we're going to start adding pitches to the rhythm that we already created. Now, if you recall, we're starting on middle C. That first choice has been made for you. So you're going to take your first rhythm right here. Let me turn on my laser pointer. You're going to take your first rhythm. The rhythm does not change. Let me say that again. The rhythm does not change. All we're going to do is move it from the percussion staff with only 1 line down to our treble clef staff and place it on a pitch, specifically middle C, because that's where we're starting. So that same rhythm, that half note, becomes a half note on middle C. All right? So the next thing that we are going to do is we are going to choose the next pitch that we're going to use. Now this can be any pitch you want to, but something to keep in mind as you are composing, if you have these really big jumps all the time, your composition is going to sound sort of jarring or unstable. We can use those big leaps. There are plenty of pieces of music that use these really gigantic leaps, but we don't want to make our entire composition out of those, because then it starts to sound a little bit weird to us, our ears, and it becomes harder to play. So what I chose to do is I'm taking my quarter note here, because remember, the rhythm doesn't change, and I'm moving the quarter note and placing it on that first space F right there. So I'm going from C up to F, moving up that perfect 4th right there, so that we are not jumping too far, but we still have a leap right there, which is going to give it a different sound than if I were to, say, put it a second higher on that low D. So I move the rhythm down, I've got that F, and I move on to my next one. What you do next is the same process over and over and over again until you get to the final pitch. So you're going to take your rhythms and you're going to add pitches to them. Your rests stay in the same place and everything like that. When you have eighth notes right here, like I've got, you're going to keep them on the same pitch for each pair. Now, this one right here, like I said, it defaults to having 4 eighth notes beamed together when they're in the beginning of the measure like that. Each pair stays on the same pitch. Now, yes, it does move down like that, but that's because I went E, E, and then D, D. I kept them in pairs. So what I did is I made a pitch for each of my different rhythms. I did this all the way until the final pitch. Now, you'll notice that it's missing. And that's because we want to make sure that we are not only starting on middle C, but ending on middle C as well. So when we add that final pitch in, it's going to end on middle C and it's going to be complete. We will have our composition all the way finished with the same rhythm, only this time it's creating a melody. So like I said, each time that you add a pitch to your rhythm, the rhythm stays exactly the same and the pitches are what can change. Now, a lot of times I get questions like, Mr. Ouellette, you said it has to start and end on middle C. Not each measure, because I've seen in the past a lot of people try to make this a C and then this one a C, this a C and this a C, things like that. The very first and the very last notes have to be middle C. Everything in the middle, you can use middle C, of course. You don't need to not use it. However, it can be different stuff, just like I've got here. F, G, B, high E, moving down to B, A, low D, things like that. All over the place, but not too leapy. Like, we keep those leaps a little bit closer together to make it easier on ourselves. So this is just one combination. This is just one sample. I could have picked completely different pitches and gotten a completely different sound with that same rhythm. So what we're going to do is we are going to kind of test our creativity here, and we are going to see what you guys can start to come up with for your own melody. All right? So we're going to head on over to Otis, and we're going to do some self-check questions again today, and we're going to see what we remember from this lesson. Okay?